2023, I visited the infamous Honey Island Swamp, which is supposedly home to a denizen creature known as the Honey Island Swamp Monster. During that journey, I learned of many encounters with this creature, and in the time since my video about it has been out, I've learned even more. So in early 2024, I ventured back to the Honey Island Swamp to follow up on these leads and explore deep in the swamp itself. Join us for this journey back to one of Louisiana's most enigmatic places. The Honey Island Swamp has often been described as one of the most primitive swamps in all of Louisiana. While the area is seemingly wedged between populated rural areas of both Louisiana and Mississippi, it spans over 70,000 acres, most of which are protected as either state or federal wildlife management areas. It is linked to over 80,000 acres of continuous, uninterrupted swampland habitat spanning into other parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. Many creatures call this place their home, but one creature is unlike the others. For decades now, the Honey Island Swamp has been the focus of a story about a swamp-dwelling ape-like creature known as the Honey Island Swamp Monster. I visited the Honey Island Swamp last year in order to explore it and document stories and encounters from the swamp, which were all part of a previous film in this series called Tales of the Honey Island Swamp Monster. During the making of that film, I learned what researcher J. Michael had uncovered regarding the alleged infamous tracks of the creature, in which he discovered the boot mold with alligator tracks on the bottom used to create those footprints. They matched up perfectly, and it seemed like case closed with that part of the Honey Island Swamp Monster lore. But what I learned on that trip was that there were many encounters that have taken place completely independently of the alleged Harlan Ford encounters. I conducted a few interviews with people who had seen or experienced something strange while in the vicinity of the swamp.
I heard a sound I have never heard before. Nothing like any animal, not a pig, not the moaning sounds of a wild cat, nothing like that. It did it a second time. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. The proximity, 100 yards from us. It was a howl, but not a high pitch, more from, I hate to say it, more of a human-like sound, an ape sound of some sort.
And as I was going down the road, I passed something that I couldn't identify. Now this was an animal, I know that it was an animal, and this thing stood in the midline of the road. If I would have been over another maybe foot, I would have hit him with my mirror. Any other kind of animal would have darted away as soon as those headlights hit. But whatever it was stayed there. And it was interesting because all I saw was its legs. So how tall would it have had to have been for the rest of its body and head to be taller than a minivan? I mean, literally I saw two legs standing on the midline, and as I passed it, it was so bizarre because I had never seen anything like it. its fur, and it's ingrained in my mind. I mean, just that one little split, passing it by, I will never forget what it looked like. It had this dirty, gray, matted looking fur on both legs. And they were big legs. They were about this big, and it was all of this fur. It reminded me of what, like if you didn't shear a sheep and they just got dirty and matted, and it looked like maybe there was some mud in there. And I passed it, and before I could even say, what in the world was that? I smelled the smell that everybody described, that I had heard my whole life, of that smelling like that wet dog, gamey kind of smell. And it had the smell of, unless you grew up down here, you don't understand when I say it smelled like swamp mud. That swamp mud, that mineral mud kind of smell to it, plus a wet dog. And it was just like, I just got this chill, because it was like, was that the Honey Island's creature?
The big problem that I ran into when I visited the area last year was the water levels on the Pearl River being very high. So high that it prevented me from visiting various parts of the swamp even with a boat, so that was a limiting factor in terms of exploring certain areas. While I was on the ground in Louisiana, I coincidentally received a message from a guy named Dave, who hunted and fished the Honey Island swamp frequently, and told me of some strange things he had experienced, but also some fascinating encounters his uncle had. We met up at the tail end of my trip, and he shared some of his stories with me. I kept in touch with Dave over the course of the year, and he would relay other stories he would hear from people he knew. After the release of that video, I also received a few encounters from that part of Louisiana, some of which I followed up on. So between hearing the stories Dave would send me from time to time to the reports I received myself, it prompted me to make a return to the Honey Island swamp once again. And that's exactly what I did in early 2024 for a direct follow-up to that original film. With the water levels being lower this time around, I would team up with Dave for a few days, and we would do some exploring in various parts of the greater Honey Island swamp and follow up on other leads. Dave, where are we at right now?
So we're at all the way at the end of Highway 11 in Pearl River. So this is actually the highway that used to run all the way from Slidell to Picayune, Mississippi, and the state line's about 300 yards that way. And this used to be an old bridge that ran across the river and then connected back on that side. And it was kind of one of the only ways you could get from Slidell to Picayune without kind of going all the way around.
Yeah.
And I think it's been washed out probably since the 60s or early 70s. Wow. And ever since it's been a wildlife management, this hasn't been here from what I know. But
yeah.
But my uncle used to hunt out here all the time when he was living in the area, 80s and 90s, and spent a lot of time out here, and learned kind of how the swamp worked, and kind of spent a lot of time. He said he would even camp out here a lot. So. And this was one of the areas that a lot of people can get down and they can launch boats and go, hunt. And he said, he would come out here and make a, kind of like a really aggressive ape call several times. And, just on the other side of the river, he said, some creature would come, start thrashing branches and making, kind of aggressive noises. And, I think he'd done that, multiple times. And one time he brought my aunt out here, and they did the same thing and had a response, and she said she'll never come out here again. Like, there's definitely something out here.
And that's wild. So right here, this is where the road ends, literally right here, and that's across the river. So you think it was somewhere around here in this area that he would do these kind of calls?
Yeah, he said he would just come walk to the end and make a call. It wasn't like he didn't feel like he needed to get any closer than this. And
I know you talked about it in last year's video when we first did kind of the interview. You talked about there was tree thrashing going on. He would he would visibly see things going on. Yeah, and it would make a return call, and it was pretty normal for him to have that type of experience out here. And have you, since I know you've kind of tried to get in touch with him, or at least you've told me.
Yeah.
Kind of tried to get in touch with him to hear more. Have you heard anything else since last year about, you know, this kind of stuff out here? That like from him?
No, not from him personally. You know, maybe just, it was about maybe 3 years ago or so that he kind of reiterated a lot of the stories that he told me when I was younger. Yeah. And, you know, he would just call it like the big old guy. You know, he didn't really have like a, you know, like a defined name for it. It was kind of just something that maybe people around here called it. And I mean, that might have even been before they really started calling it, you know, the Honey Island Swamp Monster.
Right.
I don't really know who coined that name or like when that started, but, you know, they would just call it the big old guy. And, you know, I don't know if it like why he called it the big old guy. Maybe it could have been like gray, or, you know, there was something about it that
did he ever see it?
I'm not 100% sure if he like laid his eyes on it, you know, but the story that he told me, you know, it was just he would always, you know, get these vocals and kind of like that idea where they'll just come right to the edge,
yeah,
you know, of the woods, you know, thrashing, trying to scare you and not really like giving you that visual.
And your aunt swears by it. I mean, it was,
yeah.
She was genuinely kind of scared.
Oh, yeah. You could see it in her, like, she's like, yeah, I'll never go back out there again.
That's so wild.
And they're kind of like inseparable type of couple. Like they like to do everything together. Yeah. So, you know, for her to say like, you know, I don't want to do that with you is like kind of, you know, speaks to me like there was something that she wasn't comfortable with, you know, spending time out here.
That's wild. Well, what's really cool is we have somebody who reached out to me who has an encounter not far from here, like legitimately the same area where he got screamed at by something. So it'll be really cool to go out there with him.
Yeah, and it actually kind of sounds like it, you know, his encounter was closer to where I had my encounter that I shared in the episode last year.
Yeah.
Where I had something cross the bayou and walk up the embankment, and, you know, and then, you know, I could hear the water dripping off of it and it breathing, and I you know, charged my shotgun thinking, you know, whatever it is, I need to scare it away.
With your friend? Right?
Yeah, with one of my close friends. And it was funny, that was the first time he had ever been hunting, so like he was thinking, oh, this is kind of like a normal situation. And I'm like, this is not normal. I've never heard anything like this in the swamp, you know. And then, but after I, you know, loaded my shotgun, you know, makes a pretty loud noise in the, yeah, you know, in the swamp whenever it's quiet, and it just takes off back into the bayou, and sounds like it either runs into a tree or picks up a massive branch and kind of throws it, and then proceeds to kind of skirt the edge of the little ridge that we were on. And I mean, you could feel, the foot impacts on the ground, and I mean, it sounded like a bulldozer going through the woods for the next, probably 30 seconds that we could hear it till it, right, kind of faded off.
Wild. Yeah. I mean, it's cool because this is something I'll talk about later, that this area has multiple encounters that have been reported over the years. What you've talked about with your uncle, the sighting from last year with Kalila Smith, that the creature that she saw cross the highway. I mean, that's right back here. That's right. A few miles. This is all within a few miles.
Right.
We are here with Michael. Awesome to have you out here, man. Thanks so much for meeting us out here. We're not far from the area where Dave has had some stuff happen, but do you mind just telling us a little bit about kind of what you had happen out here?
Sure. This was probably going back about 10 years ago, and a friend of mine and I used to hunt this area, and we'd always hunt the last evening of the last day of the bow season as kind of a last final hurrah, just to close out the season. Sure. We never were successful, but it's kind of just being out in the woods is a good day. So we came and hunted the last evening of the last day, and I was in one side of the hunting area and he was on the other side. And after I finished, I made my way back to the truck. Had never seen anything all day. Took my gear off, drove to the other side of the hunting area to pick him up, and parked and waited a little while till I saw him coming through the woods with his flashlight. He was way back in the woods. And he comes out and unloads his gear, and we're sitting on the end of my truck just talking and reminiscing about old hunts and stuff like that. And we started talking about a footprint that we had found years before that out in a swamp, just a giant footprint that shouldn't have been there, and miles out in the swamp. And so at that time there was a popular Bigfoot TV show, and I said, hey, watch, I'm going to call one in. So I did one of the Bigfoot calls you saw on TV. At least I tried to, and we got a laugh out of it, and it was kind of funny. And a couple minutes later, something from the woods just absolutely screams at us. It sounded, in my opinion, like a large man who was angry. It was just this loud, angry scream.
Right.
And it wasn't far in the woods. It was maybe 50 or 60 or 70 yards away. It was close. It wasn't miles away. It wasn't like an echo. It was like something right there. And where we were, there was no cars. There was no hunters. There was nobody in the area that we had ever seen all day.
And this is literally the location.
We're
right?
actually standing in the location.
Right behind you is
so off in this direction is where it came from. And again, there's no flashlights. We don't see anybody in the woods. And it lasted so long, longer than I can yell in the woods, and long enough to look at my friend, and he's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And that's all it was. We packed up and left after that. We didn't stick around to find out what was yelling at us, but it was nothing I've ever heard in all my years of hunting in Louisiana. And I've been in the woods a lot in my life, and I've heard everything there is to hear in Louisiana. And this was, like I said, it was either a large man who was very angry in the woods yelling at us, or something else.
Right.
And I just can't imagine if it was a person, because we hadn't seen anyone or any vehicles out here all day long. And there's no other way to get here. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. So, and we would have seen flashlights, I imagine.
This was after, you mentioned, what, like an hour and a half after dark?
At least an hour and a half after dark, yeah. So there was, why would someone still be in the woods in the dark,
right,
just hanging out, I guess.
And and it's right in this area back here. So, I mean,
yeah, right.
If there's a person back in there, I'd imagine you'd probably see some lights, or, I mean, why would they just be sitting in there after dark?
Right.
With
you can't
guys?
walk through here at night without a flashlight. You'll break your leg, or you'll gouge your eye out. There's just no way. Maybe with thermals or night vision you might be able to pull it off, but you'll make noise. We didn't hear anything except for the scream.
Right.
And just the length of time it went on. It was just very, very loud, very, very angry, and very, very long.
How many seconds would you estimate if you had to guess?
If I had to guess, maybe 15 or 20 seconds. It was just longer than I can yell that loud. So it must have had a large lung capacity, or was very excited to yell, but it just lasted so long. And it just sounded, like I said, like a giant angry man.
Right.
That deep, loud, aggressive yell. And we didn't stick around to find out what it was.
Afterwards, did you look up any sounds online to try to do like a comparison?
Yeah, so I was ironing, actually, a shirt one day, and the TV was on in the other room, and I heard a sound that sounded exactly like it. From another TV show where they were here in Louisiana looking for Bigfoot, and it sounded exactly like it. I had to go back and rewind it and listen to it, and it sounded just like it. It's what caught my attention, was it sounded exactly like what I'd heard. And I can't explain it. I don't know what it was. I'm not going to say it's Bigfoot. I'm not going to say it's a person. I'm not going to say I don't know what it was.
Sure.
I can't one way or the other. But something yelled at us. Yeah, I can say that.
Right. So you're in this parking lot, or not really parking lot, kind of a road loop. And whatever it is you definitely felt like it was in this direction right behind us.
100%. It was somewhere over in this area.
Somewhere over in this area. And I mean, the area back here, there's nothing. It does. If you go this way, you're not going to hit a road.
Nothing for 10 miles until you finally hit the highway.
Yeah.
So
very interesting.
There's no habitation. There's no roads. There's no way to get in and out of it. Maybe by boat, but. Did
you look into the area to see if there were other encounters or other things around here that happened after
I didn't.
that? Yeah.
No, I didn't. I didn't search and see and find out if anyone had heard something out here either. Ever since then, we've never heard or seen anything, and had never heard or seen anything before that. So it was really kind of a one-off.
And you had initially reached out to me a few months ago. I'm assuming you saw the video I did, and that kind of you felt like reaching out. Is that what happened?
I saw your video and how you were in the area, and when one of your guests told a story about a scream in roughly the same area, that's what prompted me to reach out to you.
And that's Dave. Dave, you want to just come in real quick? We have him standing right here. So it would have been Dave's encounter or his stories that you kind of heard in that video. And we just talked about this, Dave, in that spot, which is just a few miles down the road?
Yeah, it's not far at all. And it's kind of all on the same side of the swamp, like we're basically just straight south of where that happened. So, we're not really far at all.
Because I know you and I, Dave, had talked about, in discussing, I'd relayed to you about Michael's encounter, and I said this was kind of, we felt like it was maybe in the same area, and you thought this was kind of going to be almost exactly near where your uncle had his encounter. Is this kind of like confirmed to you that that's what we were thinking initially, or what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. And I know, for a fact that this was kind of the area that he always hunted. Indian Bayou Road is where we were at. And, so he's, familiar with this whole area. So, and I would assume that, it's not just staying in that one area. It's going to move around this entire swamp. But, you know, definitely this is a higher side of the swamp for the most part. So, I mean, if you're in a high water situation, you're going to be able to find ridges to walk on and kind of travel. So,
and both of you guys hunt this area. You know there's a metric ton of pigs out here, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, in your experiences, you've said you've run into them all.
Bumped into them in the dark. They're all over the place. Yeah. There are pig tracks all over the place.
So there's ample food sources around here for
deer, pigs, rabbits, everything.
Everything. It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's what we wanted to do initially was do a little bit of a kind of a recreation where we would have one of us go off into the woods here and do a scream, and maybe have you hear where you heard it, so we could kind of gauge, do a little comparison. But there's some other folks here that are out hunting, so we don't want to. I don't want to go off into the woods and just start screaming and cause a scene. But maybe we'll leave that for another time. But do you ever get creeped out coming back to here, or is it just kind of weird thing that happened?
Only once before when I was hunting in the woods did I ever had a weird feeling like something was watching me. And that was in where I hunt on the other side. It wasn't back here.
Yeah.
But that was it. I mean, the scream and that footprint that we had found way out in the swamp, which wasn't here either. It was in Louisiana, but not here. Yeah. Not terribly far away, probably 25 miles away. But that was, and that shouldn't have been where it was. It was middle of the swamp, no trails, no roads, no reason for it to be there, and it would have been washed away after the rain. And yet we find a big footprint in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And when it comes to evidence, when you think about, collecting evidence, if you find a bear print, you can say, oh, a bear came by. See a horse track, oh, horses came by here.
Right.
What do you do with a giant footprint? It's not a person.
Something I forgot to ask you, and you can maybe mention with the footprint, what year, how many years ago approximately was that?
That was probably a solid 12 years ago.
12 years ago. And
it's
then
been
the
a while.
Scream incident in this location
probably
would have been
8 or 9.
8 or 9,
yeah,
okay. So
around there.
Yeah. Man, it's interesting. And Dave, you also you talked about it in last year's video, but you had that incident happen where you heard something kind of go into the water almost, and that's not far from here either.
Yeah, I know. It's 500 yards straight down this trail. You cross over a little bayou, and once you get down this way, it starts. Most of the area is wet. So, I mean, just heard something walking through, through the woods, and then entered into the bayou. And I'm hunting on a little field, elevated field with a friend of mine, and comes straight through the bayou, walking up the other side of the embankment. I can hear the water dripping off of it. I can hear it breathing, and I'm like, this is nothing I've ever experienced before. Pigs, deer, when they know you're there, they go the exact same direction they came, and they go back to where they came. This was like, obviously, we even knew we were there because me and my buddy were talking as it's making this noise. So we're like, what in the world is this? What in the world is this? And I can see him across the field. His eyes are as big as saucers, and he's freaked out. And I felt the same way. I'm sure my eyes were big. And I go to load my shotgun just to kind of thinking, I mean, if it is a person, let them know that we're armed or we're hunting. Here, as soon as I did that, it took off like loudest thing I've ever heard in the woods. Entered back into the bayou and kind of skirted around the field, either picking up logs or running into logs, and gets out of the bayou and then just trucks through the woods. I mean, like a bulldozer. It was insane. I mean, I'm just getting kind of goosebumps right now.
You're pretty close to where it happened.
Yeah, just like every time I talk about it and like bring it back up, it just kind of brings me back to like those same type of feelings.
Yeah. And we didn't hear anything in the woods. Didn't hear the leaves crunching. Didn't hear, and you can hear squirrels make a ton of noise in the woods. We didn't hear a thing except the scream.
Yeah,
which was weird, to say the least.
Weird. Well, thanks for sharing your story, Michael. I really appreciate that. I wish we could do again this recreation, but I don't want to set anybody off out here that's hunting and have them run back, and I don't want to mess up anyone's hunt, of course. So thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
In an attempt to map out just a few of the encounters from this area that I've been told, if we look at the Honey Island Swamp itself, especially towards the middle section, there is some road access, primarily being Louisiana Route 11. It is somewhere along this stretch of highway that crosses the Honey Island Swamp that Kalila had her sighting in the early 90s. On either side of the highway is thick and inaccessible swampland. There is, however, some road access via the old Highway 11, which dead ends in the swamp, where Dave told us about his uncle's encounters. Near the end of Old Highway 11 is a dirt road that takes us a few more miles down the swamp to where Michael and his hunting buddy had their audio encounter with whatever it was. Looking at it on the map, you can see that all these areas are connected by forest and swamp. In last year's video, I had also focused on areas beyond the Honey Island Swamp itself, namely near Franklinton, Louisiana, where researcher Eden Boudreau told me about encounters from that region, which is linked to the area of the Pearl River and the greater Honey Island Swamp via the Bogue Chitto, providing a wildlife corridor. This time around, Eden told me of a witness on the Mississippi side of the Pearl River, towards the town of Carrier.
The Honey Island thing, my aunt and uncle had an experience in the early 60s on the Honey Island Road at the Louisiana side before Hurricane Camille came in and destroyed the bridges and stuff. They had an encounter there where it jumped on the roof of their car. And he had a new Barracuda, and there's a pretty heavy muscle car. And it jumped on the roof, and they took off. They got out of there. I didn't believe in the whole Bigfoot thing. I didn't believe in it. And things started happening around my home. And I raise geese. That's my little hobby there. And for 2 years in a row, my geese were the goose eggs that they would lay. They would lay a batch, and each hen would lay 12 eggs. And so I always had goose eggs. And but this one time, my goose eggs disappeared all in one night, and it happened the following year. So I didn't get a brood. I didn't get any baby geese. And so the next year I thought, well, I'll take care of that. I'll be ready for whatever's going to try and steal them this time. And so I got up, and when I heard him cutting up so loud, you could tell something was going on. I got up and I looked out the back window, and I couldn't see anything. I just kept studying and studying and studying. And so I stepped out onto the porch to fire off a round to scare off whatever it was, whether it be a coyote or whatever it was. And my something growled at me, and it was a loud growl, but it wasn't. It was scary, like what the heck was that? Was it a hog or was it a bear? There's no telling. And so I hopped back inside, and I closed the door, and I was looking through the window, and first thing you know, 2 of my geese broke off from the pack, and they came a little closer to me. It's actually about 30 feet away from me at the corner of my fence at my backyard, which I have my goose house right outside of my back porch. And it was, I don't know, probably 10 minutes that I was still studying the other area where the geese were still concentrated at. And then when I happened to look where the 2 congregated at the corner of the fence, I saw the Bigfoot, and he was looking at me, and he was studying me all that time. I didn't even know he was there. And he was grinning, showing his big square teeth, and he scared the living lights out of me. So he kept staring and looking at me, so I started to do the same thing. I was staring at him and trying to study the way he looked. And to describe him, his top of his head was black and shiny like a Labrador, and its face was framed in a white, long frame of hair. Eyebrows, facial on the sides here, and then under the chin, and it had gray-green eyes, and it kept staring and staring and staring, and so I got to thinking. I said, well, I know he wants to come in and get those goose eggs, so I opened the back door to fire off a round to scare him off. I wasn't going to shoot at him. I just wanted to scare him off from the goose eggs, and he took off so quickly. So I said, well, I'll fire off a round anyway, just to scare him away. And when I pointed the gun towards the woods, because that's the woods along the backside of my fence there, he let out the loudest roar ever. And it was so loud that it vibrated my chest. It was very, very loud. And I didn't fire off the round. I jumped back in the house, locked the door, got the phone, and started calling around and thinking I'm going to call the police. And, none of that worked out. I didn't. Well, the very next day from my sighting at my yard, I went online looking for a Bigfoot group type thing. And I told them about my experience. And probably 20 minutes later, Eden called, or Eden texted me and told me who she was, and if we could get together and discuss this. And that's how I got into it. When I met Eden, and she told me that they crossed the highway at the next exit down from where I live, or truckers have reported that, and I'm like, well, where are they? I've never seen them before, but apparently they are there twice a year. September, October, November, they're there. When the apples get ripe in my neighbor's yard, they're in there and they're talking and communicating and making loud noises. And I tried to record them, but they haven't been back making those noises when I'm awake, So since then I had seen a couple of more, and one was solid black, and it was tall and lanky. It was probably about 7 feet tall, very lanky. And I saw one night in looking through bushes at me, and it had big red eyes, and they were pretty far apart. I thought it was a car across the street they were glowing brightly. And then I had an uncle that saw one that was a honey color, and it was about 5 or 6 feet tall. He said it wasn't that tall, going through the woods right by him. My neighbor's 82, I think she is. She told me that there's something that stands at the edge of the woods at nighttime, watching her and her dogs. She lives alone. Watching her and her dogs. She had a street light put out there, and she can see this thing out there. So, in the goose house, I have a infrared light hanging to keep them warm, especially while they're brooding, trying to hatch their eggs. Well, it's a heat lamp, like on a farm for chickens, and they don't like the infrared. Don't like it at all. So I would go out and I would see it would be out. It'd be off. So I'd go out and I'd go buy another bulb. And I'd come back. And I'd go to change it out, and I would see it was loose. They were unscrewing it until it goes out, and then leave it alone. That's kind of crazy. But more than one time they've done that, and then it got to where they would just start breaking the bulb. They would snap it loose. I'd find it in my yard sometimes. It's quite an experience to see that these things can do this. They I guess because they don't like it. Oh, so I put game cameras up too, by the way. I put 3 game cameras all facing the same way towards the goose house, and because my brother who lives across the street he's a non-believer, and he thinks I'm crazy. Well, these 3 cameras were all facing each other, so there's no way that anything could come to him and undo him and take him off or whatever. Well, one grabbed a tree, like broke a tree and stuck it upside down in the ground between all 3 cameras. And I thought, man, I got him on cameras now. I saw when I went and checked all the cards, not a single picture of any Bigfoot at all, none. I don't know how they did it, but that tree was purposely placed there. I guess because they knew it was the cameras, and and my brother said, "Yeah, well, you're crazy." the infrared probably gave it away with my cameras. So my next try, right now we have cameras out in Thomas, Louisiana. I have just gotten 2 more cameras, and I'm gonna put them near the red light to see if it can be masked, so that maybe I can get a picture.
Parts of Carrier, Mississippi are actually linked to the Honey Island Swamp via some forested river corridors, with a certainty of wildlife using those to move around. Edwin told us the story of a black bear that was collared and being tracked, that was known to travel from other parts of Mississippi to this very area, illustrating that point. Later that evening, Dave and I headed out into the swamp, but wanted to swing by Carrier first. So, right now, Dave and I are in a location on the Mississippi side. It's it's not a few miles, but it's 10-15 minutes away from the Pearl River area. And this is a location that Eden told us about. There's been a couple sightings on this road. One was of a lady driving, and she just saw a Sasquatch cross the road in front of her. Pretty standard kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the other one was apparently it was 2 teenage girls, and they were driving at night, and this thing came out on the road and started banging on the front of the car and was peeing at the same time. Like, they were able to observe this, and apparently it was very traumatic. One of the girls was kind of affected by it. Apparently it was a very disturbing kind of sighting. So those are both reports I think that Eden has been given, and she's talked to the people that have seen or had this happen to them.
And she even said that it was like in the exact same spot or something.
It was like on the same exact road.
Right.
So yeah, we're kind of in an area near a cemetery right now. We just decided to pull in here real quick and I wanted to recap those stories that she had told us earlier. All right, so Dave and I are out here in the swamp. We're gonna check out an area that I previously have checked out last year, but it was really too flooded to even get into it. It's still a little flooded, but this looks a lot better than it did.
I think we'll be able to walk around a good bit.
Yeah, so maybe just check it out for a little bit, just kind of poke around. Okay, so here's the water starting.
Probably dropped 8 inches there. Good.
Yeah, it's gone down, huh? I was just going to make a comment about how last year I would hear a lot of wildlife out here. Like, I was just hearing barred owls going off.
Yeah.
I was hearing coyotes at one point, all kinds of stuff. Because this was probably some of the area behind me was probably some of the only high ground with the water being
for sure
17 plus feet. Now it's a couple feet under that. I mean, 16 or whatever it is.
Yeah, and those owls love to go off once they start hearing somebody out here.
Do you hear that? What do you think? It's too cold for a gator right now, is it?
Yeah. Could have been an otter.
Big fish in here?
Kind of big though.
That was, yeah.
It could be a fish.
It would have been right up there, so.
Yeah. Mixed with dogs, maybe.
Look at this.
Oh.
Wow.
I think that's like a silk spider or something, maybe? They make those real crazy webs.
I don't want to get closer to that thing. Look at that thing.
Crab spider?
It's getting decently deep here. I mean, it doesn't go deeper than our boots. Oh, well. Am I speaking too soon?
Yeah, all you have to do is step on like one little 6-inch difference and you're wet. Jeez.
They're not far then.
But they can't be too far that way because they'll be in the water.
Yeah.
It's like they're up along that road.
At least 2 groups of them.
Yeah.
They do that thing where they can sound crazy. Dave, heading out onto the water. What do you think, man?
Get out there, go launch the boat. Got some nice weather. Hopefully we'll get out the boat and do some adventuring.
Yeah, check out kind of the Pearl River has multiple rivers, I guess, right? So
Yeah, this is the, I guess this is actually considered the Bogachita.
the Bogachita, okay.
And then the further it gets south, it just turns into the Pearl.
Yeah, so it'd be cool to get into some of those sort of tight places that you can't normally get to.
Yeah.
The water is a little high right now still, so that hopefully should work to our advantage, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, we definitely wouldn't have to worry about getting stuck.
Yeah, so cool. Well, we're at the launch. So we've got residential houses and neighborhood basically right here on this side of the river, and right over here is basically a wildlife refuge. They're basically just swamp. There's nothing else out on this side.
That's our Louisiana side, and then Mississippi. So the rivers,
The rivers, we're kind of straddling between the 2 states right now, moving between. This is kind of a pretty cool area. Getting out there in the more remote areas. Not a lot of, well, there's no houses on either side here. You got some high ground over there. So we're gonna try to find a spot along the more remote side of the river, tie off and get in the woods a little bit. Tough to find places. There's a lot of snags and things that the boat could get stuck on, and tough areas to tie it off. See something?
Yeah, there's a vulture.
There's a what?
A vulture.
Oh, a vulture.
Close to the water.
Yeah. Oh, there's a bird up there. See that?
Yeah. Maybe like a tarp flew off.
Yeah.
The wind or something.
All right, well,
About the best we're
found a
gonna
spot.
do.
We're gonna try to get up on a little bit of this high ground here. So we'll scope it out. So what, just try to see how deep it is over here with the paddle?
Just so we don't get stuck. I feel like it's got to drop off pretty quick. Watch your foot.
I can't even feel the bottom now. Here, yeah, it's like right here.
and see if you can grab that tree.
You want me to use this one to tie it off or both? You just throw that camera up there.
This thing's probably seen some.
Oh, believe me,
Seen some things.
it's taken a beating. We're now in. We're gonna start walking around a little bit, do some exploring. It's pretty cold for the snakes right now, huh?
Yeah.
They're gonna be hiding.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, you might run across one, but
Look at that. That little armadillo dig.
Yeah.
A little snout in there.
Yeah.
Shame something's been browsing here.
Yeah, deer. That's like one of their favorite things they eat out here. Briar patch.
Wood briars.
Yeah. Because everything's sticky, but I mean, that leaf is like nice and fuzzy.
Yeah. That's what they like, huh? Did you say acorns?
Yeah, that acorns.
So about the hogs, are they pretty much similar diet, or are they just eating anything they can get their hands on?
Yeah, hogs are like they'll root up like their tubers, like right next to like a water source.
So they're digging through all the stuff.
Yeah, we'll find some, but they'll eat the acorns a lot too. But I think the deer almost sometimes like won't eat the acorns a lot of times because they get run off by the pigs. That's correct.
Buck rub right here. Yeah.
Just doing a little scouting for next year.
Yeah, might as well. Nothing wrong with that. You can't see anything in there. Something could easily hide.
And I mean, this is the time of year when it's the most visible.
Yeah, right? So you imagine the summertime.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't be able to see much past just those trees right there.
Yeah, plus with the bugs and the humidity in here, just be unbearable.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to be out. Oh, I don't go in the woods when it's hot. You don't. That's the last thing you want to do down
fun.
And that's when the snakes are everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Looks like there might have been some water moving through here at some point.
Yeah.
Feeding,
Like
yeah, feeding into that little bayou. You ever finding snake sheds out here?
I've seen them, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw one snake last year. I don't know if they have them here, but you know, a good bit about snakes. I swear it was an indigo snake.
Well, it's cold.
Is it?
Feel it in the boots, yeah. So cool to just find like a big print out here. Schaefer, huh? So that's old. Does it say a date on the side or anything? No, it's probably not visible anymore, huh?
That's pretty cool.
So we're out here, Dave. Out here in the swamp, in the woods, really. I guess my question for you is, since we hung out last year, I think the months after I was out here, about a year ago, you told me about some encounters that you were hearing about from other people. Do you have a recollection of some of the stuff you were told?
Yeah, for sure. One of my close buddies that I hunt with a lot, he's an older gentleman. He used to hunt out in the Pearl River, Honey Island Swamp a lot in the 80s. And as he got older, he kind of transitioned to not really hunting in the swamp. It's, it can be pretty tough out here. Yeah, he told me about a story of a group of hunters that had a houseboat on the river. Not exactly sure what section, but somewhere in this general area. And they had a group of hunters that were they had, all come to the camp for the weekend and were just kind of hanging out, and they had all their stuff, on the outside of the camp.
Sure.
And they heard, at nighttime, they heard some loud, kind of banging, some, kind of ruckus out there, and they went out of the cabin or the camp to find all their stuff thrown up into the woods. And, I don't think they found necessarily any, like, evidence that there was, like, any footprints or anything like that, but I mean, something came, and you can't tell me that, some human's gonna go and grab a bunch of, guns and gear and, go throw it out there and not expect something bad to happen.
Or not steal it.
Yeah, or steal it, right? Yeah, that doesn't make sense, yeah. And he said that same weekend that all those guys were out there, there was a guy that had shot a doe and, saw the blood trail kind of going into a thicket, kind of like this, that, you can't really see into. So he decided to back out and, get some other guys to help him. And they brought some other guys out there, and they, blood trailed it into a real big thicket. And apparently, I mean, what he told me the story was that, all of a sudden something throws the carcass of the deer out of the thicket, and it lands on the other side of them. And I think, they kind of got the picture at that point and, got out as quick as possible.
That's the same weekend as this other incident?
Yeah, same weekend. Yeah.
Wow.
Because it was the same group of guys, that had experienced the thing the night before. So I think they kind of tied those two things together. Like there's something going on out here.
There's either somebody out there doing this, which
right.
seems kind of weird, I guess.
Right.
Or something.
Yeah.
That's a weird one.
Yeah. And I don't think I've really ever heard any type of, like, I guess I would call that kind of an aggressive, side or aggressive encounter. So I haven't really heard many things like that. Mainly just like people seeing glimpses as they kind of walk into a thicket or behind a couple trees. And a guy that I worked with a couple years ago at a restaurant, we were just talking, and he was, we were just, getting to know each other, asking me like what kind of stuff I like to do. And, I told him I pretty much, live to hunt and fish. That's kind of, what I like to do mostly. So, and, he, asked me like, where I like to hunt and fish. And I was like, oh, I'm mainly in the Honey Island. And he's like, oh, you hunt out there? And, his eyes got big. And I said, yeah, it's, I'm addicted to it. I don't know why, I love it out there. And he's like, yeah, I stopped hunting out there, when I was about 14. And as soon as he said stopped hunting, and kind of could see like, his mannerisms kind of tighten up, and he was kind of getting nervous, and, the hair on the back of my neck started standing up, because I kind of had a feeling like maybe where the story was about to go. And he said that he was hunting with his dad, deer hunting with his dad. And, they're hunting in the same location. He was young, so they didn't split up. And he happened to just kind of look up on this ridge, early in the morning, and saw some figure kind of just staring at him, and, kind of moving around, kind of swaying out the side of the tree, kind of that prototypical, kind of encounter that you hear. And, by the time he got his dad's attention, to look, it was gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he was freaked out that he didn't want to go hunt after that.
Oh yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, he said he doesn't. He doesn't go hunting anymore. And I don't know how much of a diehard hunter he was. There's a lot of that generation where the dads kind of drag the kids out. And I wish, I guess I had that. Like I had to do it all myself as a kid. So, but those were the two main stories that I got. After we did our last, kind of stint out here.
And that kind of coincidentally just came to you, like people started telling you, because it sounds like that story with the figure. I mean, he was just, you were talking about hunting and fishing, and that just randomly came up.
Yeah, I didn't bring it up at all. And that's something like, I kind of like to gauge people before I start kind of talking about those things, because you could hit a wall pretty quick,
sure.
If you start talking about that kind of stuff. But
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Shoot, what was I about to say? Yeah, and then my buddy Steve, he's always asking me, are you still hunting out there? The older guy that I told you that used to hunt out here in the 80s. And, he's just like, you be careful, call me if you ever need anything, because
sure.
It can be dangerous out here.
Yeah, it's not a joke for sure. I mean, just looking around where we're at, you can get lost so easily.
Right.
And just not know where you are.
Right.
If you don't have like a good either something with a map or GPS or something. No joke.
Yeah, and then and funny part even about when Steve told me those stories about that hunting group, I hadn't said anything about it at all, other than, you know, how's the hunting been in the swamp, and he's like, I have some stories to tell you.
Yeah.
And as soon as he said that, it was the same thing.
You kind of knew.
Hair on the back of my neck standing up, and
it's wild when stuff like that happens, because again, it's not like you were fishing for stories in that situation,
right,
or either one really,
right. Yeah, and I you know, and then after you know, my buddy Rich that I worked with, when he told me about the story that him and his dad had, then I kind of elaborated on like some of the things that I've had happen to me, and you know, he was just like, and you still go out there?
Yeah.
I'm like, I guess so. I guess until, you know, I have some sort of like, you know, out of world experience that scares me to death, I don't think it's gonna, you know, get me out of here.
Wow, that's a big old growth, huh? You ready? Hold this for a second. Look at that. That's crazy. It's healthy too. Yeah, it's not dead. Damn, that's pretty neat. Definitely gets deep out there, but not too bad. Good old cypress knee.
Yeah. Take one of those to the knee and you'll never forget it. The amount of times I've like smoked my knee and just gone straight over. Face plant.
That's definitely not fun. As we trudged through the swamp, we managed to hike a few miles in. At one point, I started doing some loud whistles as well as some hand claps, and after that, we both heard some sort of distant vocalization. Of course, unfortunately, the camera microphone did not pick up that sound, but here's our reaction. What'd you hear there? That was kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounded like, ooh.
Yeah.
But a little like throatier.
Like in that direction.
Yeah. A couple 100 yards probably. That's straight back.
Yeah, you're right. That in that direction, if the river's right there. Is that it again?
Kind of sounded like it, but like lower.
That first one sounded like it was that.
Yeah. That was weird.
This was easier to get through. I just barrel through there, but take us hours just to get even close, right? Back up at the river here. That was a good little hike. We were in there for a couple hours. Heard that noise, whatever that was. Got some, what are they, river clams?
Yeah, razor clam.
Razor clams? Yeah. All right, so we're back now. Back in the boat after our long hike there. That was pretty interesting. I mean, hearing whatever noise that was.
Yeah, that was kind of wild. And it was right after we had done, you know, you did some whistles and a clap.
Yeah, just kind of goofing off.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're out here a lot. You don't hear stuff like that often, right?
No, I mean, not like just a single, like kind of, you know, one call and then you don't hear anything else. Like I've never heard anything like that.
All right, I'm in. Whew, we're good. We made it. That evening, we would meet up with Eden in the Old River Wildlife Management area of Mississippi, just north of the Honey Island Swamp itself.
So Eden, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too.
So what is this area? You don't have to give any specifics, but
No, I don't mind. It's the Old River Wildlife Management area.
Has there been a history of sightings in this area?
Yes, there was. There was actually a report where it was a single family camping back here at the campground, and the wife ran back to the house. She forgot the hamburger meat. She took the kids. They ran back to the house. Well, she decided she was going to cook them while she was at the house. When they got back, he was packing everything up. He said that one had walked out of the woods from over there where those campers were that we saw. Yeah, it had walked right out of the woods on him.
In this area, I mean, it's all woods that basically backs up to the Pearl River, right?
Right. Yes. This is the floodwaters from the Pearl River.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it just goes for miles and miles.
We poked around the area for a bit that night, but with the presence of other people in the area, it was uneventful for anything in the strange category. An area as expansive and dangerous as the Honey Island Swamp is near impossible to explore. People like Dave have hunted and spent a lot of time out there and still haven't even scratched the surface in terms of hard-to-get-to places within the swamp. That about wraps it up for this return visit to the Honey Island Swamp. Hopefully you've enjoyed hearing some of the encounter stories, as well as the swamp exploration. Even though we still are far from any kind of conclusive answers, I have yet to see this part of Louisiana covered in this way before. Is the Honey Island Swamp a conducive habitat for something unknown? Or does its seemingly creepy and remote nature just inspire mystery? That is probably a question that humans have been asking themselves as long as they've laid eyes on the Honey Island Swamp. We can only hope, for the sake of future generations, that this region remains the way it is, wild and inhospitable for human habitation.